The Forger. His story reads like something from a spy novel. Risking death at the hands of a dictator, a member of an underground resistance group expertly forges documents that help thousands escape to freedom. Except these events actually happened. And the forger wasn't a seasoned resistance fighter at all, but a shy teenager who had worked in a clothes dyeing and dry cleaning shop. During World War II, Adolfo Kaminsky resourcefully adapted the skills he'd learned on the job to make fake IDs and other documents that helped thousands of Jews in France escape deportation to the concentration camps. At one point, he had 3 days to produce 900 birth certificates and food ration cards for 300 Jewish children who were about to be rounded up by Nazi authorities. The goal was to deceive the Germans until the children were sent off to safety. He forced himself to stay awake for 2 straight days, telling himself, in 1 hour, I can make 30 blank documents. If I sleep for an hour, 30 people will die. Thousands of Jews were saved during the Holocaust by various underground resistance groups. If discovered, members of these groups faced certain death, yet they risked hiding Jews, smuggling food or weapons to them, or transporting them to safety. Acts of sabotage. In 1943, when he was 18, Adolfo's family was arrested in northern France and sent to Drancy, a camp near Paris. Drancy was an internment camp that would eventually lead to a death camp. But they were released from Drancy after 3 months because Adolfo's parents had once lived in Argentina, and the Argentinian government protested their detention, allowing the Kaminskys to be released. Soon after, his family began to fear that their Argentine passports would no longer protect them. So they sent Adolfo to secure false passports from the anti-Nazi French underground. The underground agents soon learned that Adolfo had a special talent. He knew how to remove Waterman ink from clothing. Waterman ink was an indelible blue ink used in official documents like ID cards and food ration cards, and no one in the resistance could figure out how to erase it. If Jews had any chance of escaping deportation, typically Jewish names like Israel and Abraham had to be removed from official documents and replaced with French-sounding names. Adolfo had learned how to remove stains after dropping out of school at 13 to support his family. He took a job at a clothes dyeing and dry cleaning shop in Vire and experimented with chemicals that removed the most stubborn stains. He had also spent hours talking to a chemist at a local dairy about how lactic acid, which forms naturally in milk, could be used to bleach even supposedly permanent blue ink. Those skills made Adolfo a key member of a Paris underground resistance team. They altered documents or created new ones from scratch. Adolfo also produced various typefaces, which he'd learned to do while editing his school newspaper, to match those used by the authorities. He pressed paper so that it too matched and created his own official rubber stamps, letterheads, and watermarks. Word of the lab spread throughout the European underground, and soon he and his colleagues were getting orders from London and across Europe and producing 500 documents a week. Historians estimate that France's resistance network saved 7,000 to 10,000 children. I was lucky. The work Adolfo did was extremely dangerous. Adolfo's memoir, written by his daughter Sarah, opens with Adolfo sitting on a Paris subway clutching a leather satchel containing blank identity documents and tools to forge them. When a police officer walks through the train checking documents and asks Adolfo what's in his bag, Adolfo tells him just some sandwiches. Would you like to have one? He casually asks. Fortunately, the officer didn't check further. After Paris was liberated by the US and other Allied armies in August of 1944, Adolfo went to work for the French government. He fabricated German documents that allowed intelligence agents to go into German-held territory and gather evidence about the concentration camps. For almost 3 decades after the war, he forged documents for resistance fighters in such conflict-torn places as Spain, Algeria, and South Africa. He stopped in the early 1970s and continued to make his living in Paris as a photographer and photography instructor. All right, that is the end of our first recording. We're going to come back with a second recording for the last 3 paragraphs of today's article.